And we're back, folks, here on WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking Triple H's Road to WrestleMania, Creation and Destruction, which aired after NXT TakeOver 25 on Saturday, which was only fitting as Triple H is the mastermind behind NXT. And this special featured a lot of footage from TakeOver New York just 2 months ago over WrestleMania weekend, which was another extraordinary event. I was at 25 on Saturday. I was at New York 2 months ago. I will not be at the Toronto one. I'm taking the TakeOver off. Maybe the Tampa one in April of next year. But yeah, these past two TakeOvers were fucking amazing. I'll tell you that much right now. But anyway, I was partly worried when I first started watching this special that it would mostly consist of all the videos that they took of Triple H's WrestleMania Diary that aired on WWE's YouTube channel. There were like a series of videos, of little short videos, following Triple H on the road to WrestleMania that weekend. It aired on their YouTube channel. It showed him at the Hall of Fame, at TakeOver, at WrestleMania. And I thought, although they did feature a lot of that footage on this special, it wasn't what those videos were. Like, for example, the Matt Riddle Arrival special they did here on the network about like a few months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, were simply the Arrival series that the WWE PC YouTube channel had put up many, many months ago. And then the network special was simply those videos combined into one like half-hour long special. That's not what this was. This features a lot more footage than what you saw if you watched those videos in the Triple H Road to WrestleMania, the WrestleMania Diary videos that he did leading up to WrestleMania a few months ago. So to kick off the special, we hear Triple H talking about balance, and he wears a lot of hats. Of course, like I said, he's the head of NXT. He's a wrestler sometimes. He's a businessman most of the time. So when he's with his kids, he's with his kids. He's a father. When he's in the ring, he's a wrestler. When he's at NXT, he's doing that stuff. When he's at home, he's doing that stuff. So he tries to balance everything out the best that he can. And he talks about how it's important to be in that moment, to not be worrying about other things when you're somewhere else. Like, for example, when he's at home, he's a father. He's not worrying about his work at WWE, NXT, so on and so forth. So his real road to WrestleMania begins to WrestleMania 35 on Friday, March 29th. He's at the WWE headquarters in Stamford. Someone wishes him a happy Friday, and Triple H mentions, not to him, but while in the elevator, like, yeah, that guy gets a weekend off. I don't. It's, full speed ahead from here on forward as the road to WrestleMania really kicks off. So he arrives at Raw, I think in Washington, D.C. on Monday. And before Raw, he doesn't do anything on Raw. I think it was just Batista cutting a promo that night before their match that Sunday at WrestleMania. He does meet with a Make-A-Wish kid, which was really cool. And he talks about how in that moment he realizes the importance of what he's doing. Like how everything kind of has an effect on people, how much he really impacts people. That doesn't really dawn on him until he does stuff like this, which is cool. Then Tuesday comes. He flies out to, I believe, L.A. He and Stephanie do to meet with Rick Rubin, who is, if you're not familiar with him, I'm not overly familiar with him. I've just seen his face on WWE TV many, many times and heard him talked about in like music-oriented stuff. He's a very well-known person within the music industry. I believe a very popular recording artist. And Triple H and Stephanie meet with him at his recording studio / his home. So like he has his house, but then like his recording studio is like a trailer right next to his house in his backyard, which is pretty cool. So again, if you know Rick Rubin, you know what I'm talking about. If not, he's usually the guy that shows up in the crowd like anytime that WWE is over in his area. I remember seeing him in the front row of like every fucking SummerSlam from 2009 to 2014. So yeah, that's that guy with the white beard, the white hair. Very popular and well-known figure in the music industry. Very cool guy from what we saw here, too. Then on Wednesday, I think in that same area, Triple H attends the World of Sport Congress meeting, or whatever the fuck it's called, talking about relishing that opportunity to really show people that wrestling, sports entertainment, as he calls it, whatever, should be a part of that sports world. It's always bothered him that wrestling was not compared, or really not, included as part of that world with baseball and football. And of course, professional wrestling is not on that same level in terms of realism, because it is all sports entertainment. It's called that for a reason. It's all scripted and whatnot. But it still deserves a spot. It still deserves, he still deserves a seat at that table of the other sports heads and stuff like that, talking about how, wrestling is very athletic and the very different ways that it separates itself from other sports such as baseball and football and basketball and stuff like that. So he really enjoyed that opportunity. So the trip to LA was not easy because he flies over to New York the very next day, that same night actually. On Wednesday night around 11 p.m. he arrives in New York, and then the very next morning he wakes up and he's wearing a complete different set of hats. He runs down the lineup for NXT TakeOver New York on Friday, talking about how one of his goals with NXT was to at one time achieve a $1 million gate for one of these shows. And then while running down the lineup for the event, he reveals that NXT TakeOver New York broke a $1.124 million gate. So he broke that record, higher than any other record that NXT had achieved up to that point, which is really cool. Saying that NXT is a much bigger success than I think some realize, but he was really happy that he was able to break that record with this show. On Friday morning, he appears on FS1 to announce the new WWE show coming to FS1 later on this year to precede SmackDown. I think it's coming to FS1 on Tuesdays, if not right after SmackDown on Fridays, but that's part of the Fox deal that WWE has going on right now, which is pretty cool. He talks about how, he wants wrestling fans and WWE fans, sports entertainment enthusiasts, which is so fucking stupid, but he wants everyone to be excited for TakeOver, not just the WWE fans, but other people as well. Spread the word about NXT, bringing it to the masses, which is really cool, and he makes a great point there in talking about that. So then TakeOver time arrives, and on the day of TakeOver, he's just kind of seeing where his hand is needed for the show, in terms of, okay, Velveteen Dream's entrance needs some tweaking, work on this part of your match, talk to this person, do that. Take part in the signing of Kushida earlier on that day. Talk to Damian Priest at ringside, which was also really interesting, and I wanted to mention that because you see Triple H talking to the former Punishment Martinez at ringside for the show. Obviously, he was not at that event. He's had only like 1 or 2 NXT TV matches since he was signed late last year, but vignettes started airing for his debut this past Saturday at TakeOver 25, and this aired right after TakeOver. So I thought that was interesting, because he said to Damian, Punishment, whatever you want to call him, in this little clip that we see of Triple H with him here, he says, that's more character. I really want more of you. I feel like that's more character. And what I feel like he was talking about there was the Punishment Martinez character felt more, like, oh, I'm scary, look at me, I'm a demon, blah, blah, blah. And it was a lot less of, whatever his real name is. It was a lot less of Damian Priest, which is what I feel like we got with that vignette on Saturday. We see him getting a tattoo, walking down a dark hallway. That feels to me more like Damian Priest than, or whatever his real name is, than Punishment Martinez did, which I think is really cool. So keep an eye out for that guy when he debuts sooner rather than later, because I think he's a great talent. I was a big fan of his in Ring of Honor. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table in NXT. But right before TakeOver, he gives a pep talk to the talent in the locker room, which we've seen many, many times. I think I'd seen something similar on, I've seen it before, like one of those, I don't know, maybe it was a 24 special. Maybe it was the 24 of WrestleMania 32. Maybe that's what it was. But we see him backstage talking to the talent that night, which was also another great TakeOver. He does the same thing here, and he talks about how it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of everything, but, and also just forget about where he is and what he's doing, and he learns to just appreciate the moment. So he absorbs it, and that's where the greatness comes from, he says. And the show delivers, he says, which it absolutely did. One of, if not the best TakeOver they've ever done. He talks to the talent afterwards and says how proud of them he is and how they really brought it to the table that night and how they fucking went out there and just killed it. They fucking killed it. That was such a great show. Saturday comes along, and then while in the car riding to the Hall of Fame, it starts to sink in that he's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame that very same night. He rehearses with the rest of DX for their Hall of Fame induction later on that night. Says a lot of it was just organic. A lot of it was who they are. And part of the rehearsal was just kind of remembering what that chemistry was. It wasn't really all that difficult. It's like breathing to him. That's how easy being with the rest of DX is. So he has to rush from the rehearsal to a WWE Business Partner Summit, and he talks about the presentation and making it entertaining and all these other things. And then he has to rush all the way back to the Hall of Fame to take pictures in his tux, which is at the arena, before they go out and do the actual induction. So right before the Hall of Fame induction, he meets with Chyna's sister Kathy, who has been a big proponent of getting Chyna into the Hall of Fame for many, many years now, ever really since Chyna passed away 3 years ago. And he says that was closure for him to meet with his sister, and he knew that they were really, really close when she was alive, and he thought that was cool. So the induction goes great. It was a really fun induction. Right after it's over, he heads on over to MetLife Stadium for WrestleMania rehearsal and, stuff like that. That's right after the Hall of Fame. And he says, now it starts to sink in that I'm wrestling at WrestleMania against one of my best friends in Batista. He says, this takes a lot of focus. And those other things, they're scratched off my list. They're scratched off the bucket list. And now I can finally focus on WrestleMania itself, because this is what this business is all about. WrestleMania, events like this. This is what WrestleMania should be, the pinnacle of your career, competing at WrestleMania. And of course, Triple H has been at a million different WrestleManias, but every single one is special to him. So it's also cool to him, he talks about during the special, it's cool for him seeing people that he kind of helped groom for the main roster, people like Ricochet and other people like that, get their first moments at WrestleMania. Someone like a Ricochet and an Aleister Black, and I can't think of other people who had wrestled at other, in NXT that had wrestled at WrestleMania 35 for the first time. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's a cool, Papa Bear moment for him, to see him be that person, to those people for so long in NXT, and then to see those same people achieve their goals of competing at WrestleMania is a really cool, satisfying feeling for him. And he also talks about getting the surgery for his shoulder right after Crown Jewel back in November. He hurt himself in that matchup, putting his match with Batista at Mania 35 in jeopardy, but he was able to heal in time. He got back just in time for Mania 35, which worked out wonderfully for him. The match went well. He beats Batista, and then he goes right backstage in time for the main event. He doesn't talk too much about the match itself. We see clips of the match, which I enjoyed. A lot of people sat on their hands for, or they did the wave during it, or whatever else. But I enjoyed it for what it was, and I thought it was a good match, from a storytelling standpoint anyway. So like I said, the match ends, he goes backstage, watches the main event between Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair for the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, the first ever all-women's main event in WrestleMania history. And he says the women were the main event because they were given that. Not because they were given the opportunity, rather, but because they deserved that opportunity. They deserve to be in the main event of WrestleMania, which I completely 120% agree with. And he congratulates Becky Lynch afterward, who obviously he was close with from their time in NXT several years ago. And then he's like, this time that I'm talking to you right now, right after WrestleMania, is just while I'm catching my breath from the show. That's our off season, because tomorrow night we have Raw, and then on Wednesday we get ready for NXT TV tapings. So that's what it's all about. This is the off season, and then it all begins again, all over again tomorrow with the Monday Night Raw and then the NXT TV tapings. It starts all over again. And then he says to close out the special, I'm always nervous. I mean, if you're not nervous for a show like WrestleMania, then you're in the wrong business. But he says, you do the best you can, and that's the secret. So that is the Creation and Destruction, Triple H's Road to WrestleMania special that aired after TakeOver on Saturday. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I really, really like this. It's a very nice recap of Triple H's Road to WrestleMania, talking about, again, all the very different hats that he wears between being a WWE Hall of Famer at this point, being the head of NXT, a wrestler, a performer at the end of the day. I like this a lot, so be sure to check it out on the WWE Network, especially if you're an NXT fan, if you're a Triple H fan. They talk a lot about NXT on this special, so for that reason alone, I liked it a lot. But the other stuff focusing on other aspects of Triple H's Road to WrestleMania were also well done, and the special doesn't run too long either. It's only about 34 minutes. So again, as always, check it out on the WWE Network. You will not be disappointed. And thank you guys for checking out this installment of WWE Network and Chill. I very much appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video. All that stuff is very much appreciated. I'll be back in the next couple days with an all-new Network and Chill, probably of the Ronda Rousey WWE 24 special that airs, I think that aired after Raw last night, so I'll be sure to check that out either today or tomorrow, whatever, and that review should be up on Friday. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.